Good morning, everybody. We are about to begin. We have a new feed started, so welcome back to those who are joining us virtually for the Easter People presentation. As I mentioned during the announcements, this ministry was begun in 1992 by Nancy Lovely. And I said this is the 30th year. There actually was one year where we did not have presentations. I'm not sure why, back in the 90s, but we've been privileged to hear over these 30 years from our friends and our brothers and sisters in faith, many of you. So today, we have the special privilege of welcoming Mrs. Mary Johnson. I'll let her tell her story, but I also wanted to welcome, we have several teachers here from All Things Bright and Beautiful. Got a little club here and some more in the back. So it's a delight to be able to welcome you all here as well. So without further ado, welcome Mary, and thank you.
Adieu. And I have to be mic'd because Jason says it goes through the system. But when I was in college, I was doing a show, and it was when FM mics first came into being and were used, and I was standing on a stage, and I was the first one to use the mic, and the director was sitting in the back of the house, and he ran up on stage, and he said, "Get her off the mic!" So, but apparently I have to use one today. Good morning. I'm Mary Johnson. I am the fifth of 8 children born to Mo and Helen Tierney in Fort Dodge, Iowa. I don't remember much about Fort Dodge because I moved from there to Dubuque, Iowa when I was 5. But as I begin, I have to offer first a disclaimer that I tend to, when I tell a story, veer off the beaten path or the projected path. And Carrie always says, segue, Mary, where are you going with this? Segue. So I need segue insurance. So first and foremost, if I get too far off, I hope my segue will bring me back to the notes that I have taken over the last 2 weeks as I've put this presentation together. And they're full of red comments in the sidebars, so hopefully those won't be too much of a distraction. And the 3 major components of my Easter People presentation are the 3 people, the most influential instrumental people in my faith journey, music, and churches. And that may come into light as I continue. My grandfather, F.B. McTigg, was part of the Men's Civic Glee Club in Fort Dodge, and one of my earliest memories is going with my mom to hear this group of men sing, and I was enthralled. I thought, this is so great. So music from the time I was 3, 4, 5 years old has been a big part of my life and a big part of my family's life. I don't remember much about my Grandma Tierney. She was still alive. She died when I was 12. And my parents would have to race back to Fort Dodge as they'd get the call that Grandma's dying. She's not going to live through the night. And we children back in our house in Dubuque would fall to our knees with the rosary in front of this little niche that had the statue of Madonna, and we'd pray the rosary, and Grandma would survive, well, until I was 12, and then she died. My grandfather, Joe Tierney, owned a restaurant in Fort Dodge, Iowa. And this is significant because I've found out through the years here at Holy Comforter that Beth Kemp, who is from Fort Dodge, had actually been to my Grandpa Tierney's restaurant. And when I asked her if she ever met him, she said, no, I don't recall ever meeting him. But the fact that this woman here, now in this community, went to the restaurant that my grandfather owned is pretty special. So, wonderful life in Fort Dodge, but we moved to Dubuque. See, I'm getting lost already. My grandfather, McTigg, realized that none of his his grandchildren, knew each other. So he established a family reunion in Lake Okoboji, Iowa, that we all went to in our formative years, and it's the only reason that I know my cousins. I didn't know my dad's cousin so well. We weren't as close to that side of the family. But an interesting story about my dad, and the reason when he came back from World War II, instead of taking over the family business, he enrolled in Worsham Mortuary College for two significant reasons. His dad died when he was in Europe in the war, and he was devastated. And he found out through the course of his continued time in Europe that one of the guys in his unit who was more connected with the powers that be extracted him and got him back to his dad's funeral in the States, but my dad wasn't able to go to his dad's funeral. Broke his heart. He also was involved in the liberation of a concentration camp, which profoundly impacted him. So he came back and went to Worsham Mortuary College, became a funeral director, and worked at a funeral home in Fort Dodge for a while, and then had the opportunity to move to Dubuque. So we all packed up, all 7 of us at the time. My younger sister was born in Dubuque. Moved to Dubuque, Iowa. And we had no cousins and aunts and uncles in Dubuque. We were a family of 8 kids and mom and dad in a 4-bedroom house and 1 bathroom. Yeah, it teaches you great flexibility, great patience and understanding. So in these years growing up in Dubuque, having no cousins or aunts and uncles, my grandfather McTeague, as he'd go around the country and visit his kids and realized his grandchildren didn't know each other, he established this family reunion at Lake Okoboji, and he'd pay for the cabins for the whole week. And we'd pack the car up, luggage carrier on top. The reason I mention that is because recently when Bill Holland's wife, Luann, died, and the vocalist sang "Till There Was You," I saw Bill a couple months later, and I said, I thought that was so beautiful. And he said, do you know that song? I said, well, of course I do. So we stood in the parlor and sang "Till There Was You." It was absolutely wonderful. And we sing now every time he comes, or we see each other. And he sent me an email past Thursday, and he said he's on his way to California to spend time with family, so he's sorry he wouldn't be here, and signed your singing buddy, Bill. I went, isn't that great? So yes, I know every line of The Music Man. But back to my dad and how his experiences impacted his life. And I asked him once, now as a middle school child, my dad is a funeral director. Well, why do you do that, Dad? Why are you a funeral director? And my dad is the one that gave me my first lesson of what it means to be an Easter people. He said, Mary, it's not so much, he said, it's the funeral, helping family come together. It's not so much that the person died, but that the person lived. And isn't that what it means to be an Easter people? The person lived. And there were so many things in his life that I didn't know about, the quiet little things that he did. I witnessed one when we were stopped at a Dairy Queen after my sister's dance recital. And I said, well, I'll go in with you, Dad, and get the ice cream cones. And as we were standing at the counter, this tiny little woman was fumbling with her purse to pay for her meal. And my dad went, and he paid for it. I thought, well, why did you do that? And he said, clearly she was struggling and couldn't get to the money, and it was very hard for her. And it just so impacted me. And we got back into the car, and I was ready to say, hey, you see that woman there? Guess what Dad did? And he was like, you don't say anything. You don't make a big deal of it. But he told me later on that week that he had gone, it appeared that this woman knew the people in the Dairy Queen, and he went back to the Dairy Queen and asked who she was. He found out where she lived, and he got her on Meals on Wheels. And so quietly took care of her. And there were so many things like that in his life that I'm sure he did, because at his funeral, the people were lined up out the door and down and around the block, and it was this glorious celebration of my dad's life. The reason we have funerals is not so much that the person died, but that the person lived, and he lived a beautiful life. Died much too young, heart attack at 63. So Dad was the first of the 3 influential people in my life and my faith journey. My mom was second, and her stories are just remarkable. She would tell it like it is. Boy, if you crossed Helen, you were going to hear about it. There were a couple of potluck groups that my parents belonged to. One we called the Fun Crowd. They were great. They were very easygoing. Then there was this other crowd that my dad felt like they had to belong to, and it was called the White Glove Crowd. So boy, when they were on the calendar for whatever Saturday night, we were like fiends trying to clean the house because it was the White Glove Crowd coming. And at one such potluck dinner, the people in the family room were talking about how this young woman in town didn't get married in the Catholic Church. Ugh, it was just awful. And can you imagine? She's not married in the Catholic Church. And went on and on and on. And finally my mother said, couldn't stand it anymore. And she said, do you know what she's doing? They went, well, no, Helen, we don't. Well, she married a Lutheran minister. There's a young woman in her community that was terribly overweight, no job skills. Her family threw her out. They have taken in this young woman. They have her on a healthy diet. They're getting her job skills. They're getting her into school and taking care of this young woman. And she did this. This is my mom's trademark. When's the last time any one of you did anything so Christian? So when you see that, that's my mom. Shut them up. And then, I don't think it was the same dinner party, it might have been another one with the White Glove Crowd. They were going off on how this horrible music, it's just sacrilegious, it's terrible. And Mom said, Mary, go get in the other room and get what we bought today when we were out. So I went, I knew exactly where she was going. I went into the other room and came back with the album of Jesus Christ Superstar. And she said, have any of you ever listened to it? It's no different than the stories that you're hearing Sunday in Mass when you go. It's great music. I recommend it. So that was another one of my mom's. In Dubuque, my mom went back to started teaching when I was in 4th grade, so I was responsible for cooking all the meals in the family, which was great training, although peeling 5 pounds of potatoes every night for dinner. And then when I got married, I would make potatoes every night for dinner. And Carrie said one night, could we have something besides potatoes? And I said, like what? Well, his family's from Minnesota. Rice? Oh, hadn't thought of that. So anyway, there's a segue. I got to get back. Okay. But one thing I have to mention about these family reunions in Lake Okoboji and the music and the singing, wherever we went as a family, and the only ones we had growing up as children were to Lake Okoboji. Well, what do you do on Sundays? You go to Mass. So there's a church called St. Joseph's in Milford, which George knows about, and we would pack our Sunday best, and we would go to Mass in Milford, Iowa, with the hats and the dresses and the Sunday shoes, and we went to Mass. And I think there's 35 in this picture. That's my grandfather and all his kids and all the grandkids. But that was a priority. So we always went to Mass, Milford. Vacations in Okoboji continued for a period of time until it became clear that the kids were growing up and going off to college, and the older cousins. And maybe my Uncle Bob didn't think we could sustain this for too much longer, so he decided we'd just blow the wad and go to California. So he bought 10 plane tickets for Mo and Helen Tierney and the 8 kids, and we went to California for 2 weeks and stayed in this fabulous beach house on Balboa Bay. And what do you do when you're in California, Balboa Bay? You find a church to go on Sunday. So we found Our Lady of Mount Carmel on Balboa Boulevard, and we're all in our Sunday best, like this, going up to the front of the church. And as we walked up, there's surfboards up against this beautiful stucco building, and the people walking in the cutoffs and the bikinis and no beach covers. And here come, who are the tourists? Here come the Tierneys from Iowa, and all the McTighe cousins. And so we were a little bit obvious, but we were there nonetheless. So that's one of the more memorable churches that I've been to. So, the singing was just all the time. When we were in California, our theme song was whenever I hear it, today while the blossoms still cling to the vine, we'd sing that every night as we waited for dinner to be prepared. It's just, music is such a key part of my life. Didn't do much with music and performance through high school. In fact, my high school days were really kind of unremarkable. Didn't really like them a whole lot. I had some kind of nice nuns, but some really mean ones. And my junior, yeah, Tina shake, yes, really. There was my junior year of this co-ed Catholic high school. There's a thought that I could go to that's about my sister went to the all-girls Catholic high school, but that's a segue, so I won't do that. I'll come back to Wahlert High School, co-ed high school. And in a junior year religion class, this nun stood up there and said, Catholics are different from everyone else. Sister, would you please explain that? She said, well, Catholics are different from everyone else. And had I known then what I know now, I could have said something other than what I said, which was, sister, if two kids are sitting in a high chair because one's baptized Catholic and one's not, they're not going to act any differently. If they want to throw their oatmeal on the floor, they're going to throw it on the floor whether they're Catholic or not. Well, that probably came across as very disrespectful, I'm sure. So I was asked to leave the religion class. Had I known then what I know now, I could have said, yes, sister, Catholics are different from everyone else. We have different rituals and traditions and worship services. But, you know, there's Jewish and Muslim and Baha'i and Zoroastrian. People I've talked with in my experience with Nutra Multi-Faith Alliance as the rep for Holy Comforter. Lots of different opportunities. So I wish I would have known then what I know now, but I didn't know it then. So it came off as rather disrespectful. But I got home and I told my mother what had happened, the whole story, and she said, well, good for you for speaking up. So I get that from my mom. High school, done. I always knew that I was going to go to college. That was not an option. And where I was going to go was not really an option because my mother had graduated from Iowa State University before she and my dad were married, and so that's where I went. And F.J. Phillips is an alum of Iowa State University. We have that in common. So go Cyclones. So I knew I was going to go to Iowa State, which was a significant factor in the trajectory of the rest of my life, because at Iowa State, my sophomore year, I lived next door to Jan Johnson, Carrie's sister, who introduced us. And Jan said to Carrie when he got a job at the architectural firm in Dubuque, well, remember my friend Mary lives in Dubuque. If you ever need a date, call her up. Well, he needed a date for an office function. So he called me up, and it was a canoe trip with his office down the Wisconsin River. And I was having a great time. And getting to know everybody, and he'd say, this is my date, Mary Tierney. Oh, are you Mo and Helen's daughter? And do you have a sister, Jean? She went to Wisconsin State University. And do you have a brother, Jim? And do you have a brother, John? And, oh, Martha, I know Martha. So the whole thing, and finally, towards the end of the day, he said, is there anyone here you want me to meet? Because clearly they knew the Tierneys. And when I walked in the door from that date, I had been on the river the whole day. I had hair down to my waist, and it was out here, kind of like picture Roseanne, Deanna. I walked in the door, and my mother was reading, and she put the paper down, and she looked up, and she said, oh my God, Mary, do you think you could have done something with your hair? Do you think he'll ever call you again? Here's this young, handsome architect, and I was a mess. But he did, so here we are, 45 years later, still together. So after 3 years in Dubuque was enough to realize that that isn't where we were going to be comfortable in our professional careers, and we moved to Chicago. Especially, Carrie had far more opportunity here. If he stayed in Dubuque, he told me once he'd be designing prisons and water treatment plants. Not really exciting. So we moved to Chicago, and we lived in the city for 10 years, alternating between Fourth Presbyterian Church. Carrie was raised Presbyterian. I was raised Roman Catholic. So we alternated between Fourth Pres and Holy Name Cathedral. nice blend, it worked out well. But then Molly was 4 when we moved from Chicago. She was born in 1982. In 1986, we moved to Kenilworth. And I called St. Joe's and Faith Open Charity, and based on the conversations, I thought, okay, we'll go to Faith Open Charity. So we were there for a number of years. And although while we were there, Molly and Betsy were enrolled in the Sunday school program, but Molly was finding her way to Holy Comforter and experiences with Jenny. And she mentioned it this past week when she was here for Easter. She said, oh yeah, Shades of Lock-In with Mike Murphy. And said, not that we went to the bell tower at midnight or anything, or the Undercroft, but great memories for Molly of Holy Comforter before we found our way here. And how did we find our way here? Well, the third significant person in my journey of faith is Barbara Helgen. Her tenacity. Mary, you got to interview for the preschool position at All Things Bright and Beautiful. I said, no, I'm not qualified for that. Yeah, back and forth. So finally I did. I called and sat for an interview and found out about this wonderful ministry of All Things Bright and Beautiful. It was the vision of Gretchen Quinn, who started it, and she had this idea that there could be this ministry of Holy Comforter, an early childhood program that incorporates as many members of the parish as possible, and that continues to this day. When I came here, Sissy Crawford, Margaret Campbell, and Jane Coley were the 2 teachers. And now we have Ann Feeney, who is retiring this year. She's been a teacher for 12 years. 16. Margot is a teacher, a parishioner, and Anya Chubin is a teacher, and she coordinates our Sunday children's chapel activities. So it continues to be a very strong ministry of Church of the Holy Comforter. And that's something to be very, very grateful for and very proud of. It's a wonderful early childhood program that incorporates the love and compassion. And a key component of the junior kindergarten curriculum is something that Wynn Gilbert established, and that's Friend of the Week. Children, and it was started because they were, Wynn was hearing kids say, well, that's safe for my friend. You can't sit here, that's safe for my friend. And she taught with Heidi Getchow-Higgins, and they would say, well, no, Everett, we're all friends here. Well, no, you're not my friend. Well, that wasn't gonna fly. So they started Friend of the Week. So for the first 10 minutes of free play time, the children are paired by the teachers, and they play together. About 3 years ago, a parent of a 3rd grader called me, and she said, Mary, I just have to tell you what a gift Friend of the Week has been for my child. Really, how so? Well, now they're being put in groups and pairs, and some of the children are very anxious, and well, this isn't with my friend, and I don't really know this person. And she said, my child is so comfortable knowing that she can get along with every person in the class, and it's all good. So what a gift. And she said, thank you. So thank you, Wynn, for coming up with that beautiful curriculum piece, and all the children who have benefited from that. Okay, I have no idea where I am here because I've been rambling. Segue back, bring it back.
By the way, Gretchen and Vince are watching from California.
Hi, Gretchen. Thank you for starting this wonderful journey. It's just such a privilege to be here. And I'll get to the follow-up to that in a minute. But anyway, so we've had a wonderful, wonderful life here at Holy Comforter in terms of connecting with the members of the parish and with all of you. And in more recent years, our daughter Betsy, when she got engaged to Adam, and they were planning their wedding for September of 2016, we invited the Safranics to come and tour the church, which they did on this beautiful late summer day. And we were scoping out places for pictures. So we walked across the street to Weir Garden. And as we were sitting on the bench, And looking back up at the bell tower, Adam's mother said, "You know, Adam, it would be really special if you were married in a church." And he said, "I know, Mom." Betsy looked at me and I said, I know, Mom. So they were married here. And, you know, as couples are looking for venues to be married, a church isn't always one of the first things that comes to mind, but it was so special. So this glorious celebration of Betsy and Adam's wedding, and Carrie walking Betsy down the aisle, and just a joyous celebration with Jason officiating. It was just one of the happiest occasions. And Carrie got to pick the recessional, the Vidor Toccata, which is one of Jenny's favorites. It's Derek blazing away on that. It was just fabulous. He played it a couple weeks ago. And as we stood here and listened to the whole thing, Carrie said, "I didn't get to hear it all the way through as the recessional because we all had to exit the church and we were going on to the reception." So anyway, that was a special moment. Followed by, a couple years later, the baptism of our first grandchild, Claire Elizabeth Safranek. The church was packed. It was a beautiful, beautiful baptism celebration. And we can't wait until things open up and we can have the baptism for Claire's younger sister, Catherine Jean. So hopefully that'll be on the calendar pretty soon. And then came 2018. And the incredible joy of weddings and baptisms was followed by, in 2018, my sister Martha was 63 on December 14th, 2018. And she said a couple times that week, "I'm the same age Dad was when he died." I said, "I know, Martha, isn't it? So young, so young." And she said it twice. I thought, really, where are you going with this? So December 29th, 2018, I got the call from Pat, my brother-in-law. We raced down to Evanston, and Martha was dead. We called Jason. He came over that afternoon, and we're all in shock. Just no warning, no thought that this could be happening. So we sat with Jason for a while, and we decided to meet on Monday, December 31st, which is my brother John's birthday. And Katie walked in the front door of the office wing of the building and said, "Look what came yesterday." Martha was the queen of, as Jason mentioned in his homily at her service, queen of Amazon and just everything, ordering everything online. So Katie walked in and said, "Look what arrived, pocket angels for all of us." So I carry this with me always. Betsy has hers made into a necklace. So incredible shock. And as we sat with Jason, we're planning something that none of us imagined we would be doing, Martha's funeral mass. And we said, so it's all about music and a celebration of her life. And Martha would say, "Why do people always dress in these, all black? Isn't it supposed to be a celebration of life? And she would say, people should wear bright, happy clothes at a celebration of someone's life. It's a celebration." So I wore this jacket. So we have this wonderful celebration of her life. And when we were working out the details with Jason, I said, so biggest thing for Martha was family. So can we have Sister Sledge as "We Are Family" as we exit the church? He says, "Yeah, you can have that." So blaring over the loudspeakers here was Sister Sledge, "We Are Family." Took a few people by surprise. I mean, the looks as we're walking down, and they go, "Really? What are they doing? What are they doing?" Well, we're celebrating Martha. So we had this wonderful celebration of her life. Okay, so that was 28, but I gotta back up. See, segue here. In 2017, Martha planned this fabulous trip to Italy with 5 Tierney siblings, 4 of us with our spouses, and it was absolutely amazing. Carrie and I had the opportunity to go to Europe a couple times prior to that, and we had been to Paris and saw Notre Dame and Sainte-Chapelle and Sacré-Cœur, and in London, St. Paul's, where, of course, in front of the doors of St. Paul or on the steps at St. Paul's, I had to sing, "Feed the birds, stop and sit back," because it's the music. But in Italy, we saw many more churches, amazing structures. And the fact that these beautiful architectural structures exist, and they're called churches or cathedrals or duomos or basilicas, we know here that that is not the church. There's a song we sing in All Things Bright and Beautiful and in our children's chapel that states that very beautifully. And before I do that, I have to tell you, as Carter was saying, the scars on the hands, this is sign language for Jesus. So wherever you go and you find yourself at a church, just know that that's not really the church or cathedral or basilica. It's, I am the church, you are the church. Come on, we are the church together. All who follow Jesus all around the world. Yes, we're the church together. The church is not a building. The church is not a steeple. The church is not a resting place. The church is the people. I am the church. You are the church. We are the church together. All who follow Jesus all around the world. Yes, we're the church together. So we are the church. We are here to help and sustain and support each other. It's not the building. It's the people. It's the Stephen ministers. And I sought one out after, as I was going through a tough time after Martha's death, and Carrie Phillips is so involved in that. It's all of the people here that feed us and sustain us and support us. And so as joyful as Martha's service was, back to the Easter thing, I know that she's not there. A year later, when we had David Jones' funeral service here, a celebration of his life, which was the last time we had that before everything shut down, Heath and I know that Martha and David aren't there. They're here. Joe Parkin's not there. He's in Jason's ministry here among us. It's in David in carrying on through Heath and her ministry, and how much you have taught me and how much Jason has taught me. And for Martha, it's all of the people that knew her and loved her. And for me especially, it's her granddaughter, who's an All Things Bright and Beautiful student, running down the hallway in the morning, crying, "Mimi!" Martha was Gigi, I'm Mimi. And I promised Martha I would be there for her 4 grandchildren. So it's those kinds of things that's the church. That is the definition of Easter people. It's all that we live with every day. So it's been an incredible 21 years as director. As I leave, I know this school is in the incredibly capable, loving, compassionate hands of Julia Howard, who is far more qualified than I ever was to take on this position. Or I'm hitting my mic. It will, and I wish her to surpass my 21-year tenure here and go far beyond. It's in great hands. She will do a phenomenal job. And no matter how many more churches I visit or wherever our retirement takes us, Carrie's mom and dad and my mom and dad never made it to retirement. And so I'm going to celebrate that hopefully as long as the health holds out and the money holds out, that we will travel. We will spend time with our 2 delightful grandchildren. But wherever I go, this will always be home. Holy Comforter is home. Thank you.
I don't know if anybody online can hear, but thank you, Mary. This was wonderful. Thank you. And
We're both backstage, so we can do this, and I can't wait till we can hug and sing and Even though Molly and Jenny always say, it's the optics. It's the optics. You're not supposed to hug, but.
Let me just mention that we've been asking Mary, or raising her name, as an Easter People presenter for a decade. And she has constantly said no. But several weeks ago, in the staff meeting when we were pondering names, she said, I'll do it this year. So I just want to express my delight that Mary did say yes this year. A little bit like another Mary saying yes to the angel Gabriel.
That's good.
Yeah, not that I'm the angel Gabriel. But it's been a privilege to have her today, and of course, remarkable 21-year ministry as the director of the preschool, as well as, of course, her deep involvement in and leadership of the church school for many, many years as well. She said she's not going anywhere. She and Carrie are not going anywhere. This is home, and they'll be here, but just in a different shape and form. I did want also again to remind everybody that next week we have an equally delightful and shy and retiring presenter in Mike Murphy. So I hope that you will dial in again or come in person to hear Mike's journey. But before we conclude today, again, Mary, thank you so much. And thank you all as well. Have a blessed day.